Hello viewers, thank you very much for watching Gibbs TV. Today's video, we'll be looking at how to choose your study population and sampling technique. Let's get into it. Note that your research design should clearly define exactly who your research will focus on and how you go about choosing your study participants or respondents. It's very important to note that. So now let's define what study population is about. What is a study population? A study population is a group of individuals or subjects who are chosen or identified to participate in a research study or investigation. It is a group that a researcher wishes to gather from and also make inferences or draw conclusions about a particular phenomenon or research question. The study population is not limited to only human population only. It can be any set of all aspect of something in common, such as objects, plants, animals, measurement, organization, or country. But in social science, it most often refers to a group of people. In research, a study population is the entire group that you want to draw conclusion about, while a sample size is the smaller group of individuals or a subset of the population that you wish to actually collect data from. So this, you take a sample out of this entire population. Okay, so this is the population will be the universal set, then the sample size will be the subset. In this case, you focus on people from specific demographics, regions, or background. Or will you be interested in people with a certain job or medical condition or users of a particular service or product? Okay, you need to decide. Note that the more precisely you define your population, the easier it will be to gather or collect a representative sample. So there are different types of research population. That is the target population, that the general population that you want to focus. Then the population you will source by narrowing the concept a bit down so that you can get a representative sample from the entire population. Then you collect the sample size that you want to use for the analysis. So it takes three folds. The target population, that the general population that the study seeks to understand, then the source population, that the specific individuals from which a representative sample will be drawn. Then the third point is the sample population, that is individuals asked to participate in the sample, those that you actually reach, okay, to get the data. All right, sometimes also known as the eligible participants, that's the study population, very, very important. Let's take an example to understand it. Let's assume that we are interested in studying the effectiveness of online teaching in the United States of America. So the general population is that you want to study online teaching in the United States of America, but it's too broad. You know that it will be difficult to get a sample that is representative of all basic school students in the country, specifically if you want to look at basic school. Therefore, to make the research more manageable, okay, and focus, and to effectively draw more precise conclusion, you can focus on a narrow population by narrowing the population a bit down. Let's say third grade students in low-income areas of Louisiana, all right? So if you are looking at third grade students in Louisiana, specifically in low-income areas, zip codes, then probably we will have a narrowed, okay, scope to deal with. Unfortunately, this is still a lot of students. So in this case, the researcher should consider how he or she will select a sample from this particular population. And this will bring us back to how to select sample, okay? Because now if you already have your target, that's the general population, you narrow it down to the population source. That will help you to get to the people. Then you have to embark on your sampling by using a particular sampling techniques. Very, very important. Let's look at sampling technique. In general, to select a sample out of the entire study population, there are two main approaches. There are the probabilistic or the probability sampling and non-probability or non-probabilistic sampling. Note that the sampling method that you use as a researcher may affect your confidence level to generalize your results to the entire population. So you need to be mindful about the focus and the purpose of the study. Very, very important. Probability sampling or probabilistic sampling. Probability sampling means the sample is selected using random methods and is mainly used in quantitative research, okay? It helps ensure that your sample is a representative and unbiased. With this type of sampling, you can use statistics to draw strong conclusions about the whole population. Note that for the case of probability sampling, okay, you can use statistics to draw strong conclusions about the entire population. You can generalize it, very, very important. And there are various types of forms of probability sampling. First is the simple random sample. We have the systematic sampling. We have the stratified sampling. We have the cluster sampling. Let's look at simple random. A simple random sample is a randomly selected subset of the population, because anytime you are taking a sample, you draw it from the entire population. In this sampling method, each member of the population has an exactly equal chance of being selected. It is unbiased. Because it uses randomization, any research performed under this sample should have high internal and external validity, okay, and be at a lower risk for research biases like sampling bias and selection bias, okay? Because of the validity and the reliability of these techniques, some agencies, okay, have been utilizing this type of technique to collect data. For example, the American Community Survey, ACS, uses simple random sample. Also, officials from the United States Census Bureau follow a random sampling method, okay, to select individual inhabitants of the United States for a year by asking detailed questions about their lives in order to draw conclusions about the whole population of the United States. That is how uniqueness simple random is. The next is systematic sampling. Systematic sampling involves choosing your sample based on a regular interval. Okay, you can use the K interval, the nth interval, okay? So you need to set your interval level. So systematic sampling involves choosing your sample based on a regular interval rather than a fully random sample. It can also be used when you don't have a complete list of the population. Very important. The next is stratified sampling. Stratified sampling is appropriate when you want to ensure that specific characteristics are proportionally represented in the sample. Okay, so here it is appropriate to split your population into strata. For example, you can do it by gender, okay? That is all males, all females, all right? Or you can do it by race. And then randomly select from each of these subgroups. You have the cluster. Cluster sampling is appropriate when you are unable to sample from the entire population. In this case, you can divide a sample into clusters that approximately reflect the whole population and then choose a sample from the random selection of these clusters. So you form the cluster and you choose the cluster that you want to work with, okay? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clusters. Then you choose any, maybe probably you choose 2, 1, 2 to work with. Very important. Next is non-probability sampling or non-probabilistic sampling. Non-probability sample means that the sample is selected in a non-random way. It is almost always used in qualitative studies, but sometimes it can also be used in quantitative as well, okay? But predominantly it's being used in qualitative study. In non-probability sampling, each unit, okay, in your target population does not have an equal chance of being included because it doesn't involve randomization, okay? You don't do any random sampling here, all right? Good. So here you can form your sample using other considerations such as convenient or a particular characteristics. So non-probability samples are much easier to achieve, but they have more risk of bias. For example, if you choose a sample based on the most convenient and accessible members of the population, or you rely on volunteers for your study, then your sample may differ in some systematic way from the entire population. They may have some bias issues. Qualitative sampling, in terms of convenient, okay, that is non-probabilistic. For convenient samples, sometimes it's also called accidental samples, okay? Because participants can be selected from the sample simply because they happen to be nearby when the researcher is conducting the data, okay? Because the time that you're collecting data, they were there and you decided to sample them. It's convenient, okay? It has a lot of sample biases. For example, assuming that you are investigating the association between daily weather and daily shopping patterns. So to collect insight into people's shopping patterns, you decide to stand outside the major shopping mall in your area for maybe a week or a month, okay, a couple of days, stopping people at the exit and also ask them if they are willing to answer a few questions about their purchases. So you are even looking for volunteers, okay, to participate in the study. It has a lot of sampling bias. Next is the quota. In a quota sampling, you select a predetermined number or proportion of units called a quota. So your quota should comprise subgroups with specific characteristics such as individuals, cases, or organizations, and should be selected in non-random manner. Underline that, in non-random manner. So your subgroups must be called the strata, okay? And it should be mutually exclusive. And here we have two types of the quota sampling. We have one, the proportional quota sampling, and we have the non-proportional quota sampling. For proportional quota sampling, it's used when the size of the population is known. This allows you to determine the quota of individuals that you need to include in your sample in order to be a representative of your population. And for the case of non-proportional quota sampling, it's used when the size of the population is unknown. And here it's up to you as a researcher to determine the quota of the individual that you are going to include in your sample in advance. For example, for the proportional quota, let's say that in a certain company, there are 1,000 employees, okay? And they are split into two groups. That is 600 people who always drive in their own cars to work, and 400 who take the bus or train to work. So you decide to draw a sample of 100 employees from the company. So you will need to survey 60 drivers because remember you have 600. So 60 drivers, okay, out of the 600, and 40 train riders from the 400, so that you can get your 100 employees for the sample, okay? Very important. And for the non-proportional quota sampling, let's say you are seeking opinions about the design choices on website, but do not know how many people use it. So you may decide to draw a sample of 100 people, including a quota of 50 people under 40 years and a quota of 50 people over 40 years. So you use it to set a threshold. So this way you get the perspective of both age groups, okay? That is those above 40 and those below 40, very important. We have the purposive or judgmental sampling. Purposive sampling is a blanket term for several sampling techniques that choose participants deliberately due to qualities they possess. So based on judgment, it is called judgmental sampling because it relies on the judgment of the researcher to select the unit, okay, such as people, cases, organizations to be studied. Purposive sampling is common in qualitative and mixed method research design, especially when considering specific issues with unique cases. And the last one that we are talking about here is snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is used when the population you want to reach or research on is hard to reach, okay? Or there is no existing database or other sampling framework to help you find them. For example, in doing research about socially marginalized groups such as drug addicts, homeless people, or sex workers, then it's very much appropriate to use snowball sampling because we may not have a bigger picture about the entire population. So to conduct a snowball sample, you start by finding maybe one person who is willing to participate in the research, then you ask them to introduce you to the others. All right. Alternatively, the research may involve finding people who use a certain product or have experience in the area that you are interested in. In this case, you can also use the networks of people to gain access to your entire population of interest. Thank you very much for watching GIBS TV, and I will see you all in the next video.